It is 4:45, so I think we will make a start, and others care to join us, that's awesome. My name's Bill Searle. I'm the Manager of Learning Technologies at Darwin University. And
I'm Holly Burgoyne, Manager of the LearnLine Development and Training Team at Darwin University. LearnLine is our rebranding of Blackboard Learn.
So today we're going to sort of cover a bit of a journey and our user sort of journey around our journey towards base navigation. We've implemented base navigation at CDU, and we're going to sort of cover some of the steps that we have taken in order to get there. So really today we're going to look at the journey that we took to reach Blackboard Learn base navigation, and it's a story about the change and the story about the steps that we've taken, and considering the needs of our communities in that change as well. So I'm going to provide a little bit of background about Charles Darwin University just to set some context and to understand the scene, our journey to the base navigation, some of the needs of our communities and the steps we took to consider those needs, and let's just touch on what our next steps might be around transitioning. So a little bit about CDU. So I don't know if some of you may have been at Holly's session, we sort of covered some of this, but we have around about 23,000 students. We're a dual sector institution, so we offer both higher education and vocational education and training to our students. The students are sort of split about 50-50, so 50% in higher ed, 50% in the vocational space. We have several campuses and centres, as you can see on the map, across multiple states with different modes of study. So we have external students, we have internal students, and we sort of classify our sort of learning method as being either online reliant, which means pretty well 100% of the materials are delivered online, or online supported, where the bulk of materials are delivered online, but there might be some face-to-face context as well. We license a pretty comprehensive suite of Blackboard products, and we have a large percentage of higher education students that study wholly online. So they see their experience with CDU through the lens of a course, unit or subject experience, and through the LMS and the associated technologies that we bring into that ecosystem. We're also a member of the Innovative Research Universities Group, and there's 7 member institutions around Australia that are members of that consortium, and predominantly the regional institutions around the country. So in terms of our sort of EdTech ecosystem, we are in Blackboard Learn SaaS, we're in continuous delivery, we use Blackboard Collaborate, both the original and the Ultra experience in Collab. We license the full suite of Analytics for Learn, 3 different reporting layers in that stack. We've licensed Blackboard Ally, and we're currently doing a pilot of that for our summer period, our summer semester, and we've just completed all the onboarding of content for Blackboard Ally literally over the last few days, so the whole LMS has been indexed. We also license Blackboard Student Services, so all our student support is actually picked up by Blackboard Student Services, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. So all those support requests actually are outsourced to Blackboard Student Services, and we spoke a bit about that last year. We also license EasySoft as well. We use Easy Support and Easy Messaging for in-context support and help and messages and campaigns. We use VoiceThread as well, Respondus Lockdown Browser, and there's a few others in our suite as well. So in terms of sort of our journey, what I sort of wanted to point out was, I suppose, there's this whole sort of point around, I suppose, signalling the intent and agreement to move forward, and then discovery, reviewing and making the next step and the decisions. Around the implementation, again, after implementation, we had a review and a trial period, and then some change, review and action. So that's that sort of continuous cycle where you're continually reviewing. So it was around about last year, it was March last year, the university signalled the intent to move to a 5-year, multi-year agreement with Blackboard. Prior to then, we, probably like other customers, had been on an annual renewal contract. And then after that, we sort of went into this period of time of having conversations about migrating to Learn SaaS. The contract was executed in May, so we moved pretty quickly. We sort of signalled our intent in March, executed the agreement in May, and then by June that year, we had a SaaS test instance up and running. And then by July that year, we had pretty well transitioned into a SaaS context, and we opted initially for the flexible deployment option. Following that period, there was another period of review where we then started to consider what was the next steps in this process. So Holly and Harriet spoke earlier today about that move from flexible deployment to continuous delivery. So that was our next sort of logical step. So there was a period of time where the team sort of looked at reviewing the processes around continuous delivery, some of the change management around that, and at the beginning of this year, around about March this year, we went to CD. And then we also, at the same time, in parallel to that, we had a series of test instances around Blackboard-based navigation. So we initially implemented it on our test server, and then we implemented it into our staging context. Again, looking at a bit of a review, what are the needs of our communities, what are the considerations there. And 9th of July, we went live in production with base navigation. So we actually went live before the semester 2 teaching period, and then a week later, students logged into the environment for the first time. And Holly will sort of talk now a little bit about, I suppose, that journey in terms of getting to base navigation. Thanks, Holly.
Thanks, Bill. Oh, again, okay. Sorry. I don't know how to work slides. So yeah, as Bill said, it was a bit of an iterative process where we did sort of our discovery, investigation and review, and then develop, finalise and get it all completed. We did a fair bit of investigative and brainstorming work initially to kind of work out how we were going to move, our current sort of communication mechanisms that we use around the LMS. We have communities, so there's all the tabs and modules and all that kind of thing, and just try to get down everything we could think of that might be impacted by the move to base nav. And I think we ended up with, a list of like 200 odd sort of issues or questions. Some of them were very simple to resolve, and others were a little bit more complex. So I think we've called out a couple of the main ones here. One of the big ones was, what will be the default landing page moving to base nav, because there was 3 options: units, stream and institution. We had a feeling in our area that the activity stream would be the way to go, but we weren't able to go with that, but we'll talk about that later. We also, as I said, needed to look at our sort of support and critical messaging, because we used our tabs and modules as communication mechanisms for our students, and we were going to lose all of that. We also had other areas use our environment as a communication mechanism, so the library, student central type support areas, and we were not going to be able to offer that to them anymore. And in some ways that's good, because the LMS is for learning and teaching. We don't need to sort of be the catch-all for every kind of communication message that needs to go out to students. We would get asked to put up a message if there was a cyclone, because people just didn't know where else to put it, and they kind of thought, oh, well, almost everyone gets in to LearnLine, so they'll see it there. So they're the kind of things that we're just not going to be able to do now that we've got base nav, because we don't have as much real estate for that. So there's a lot of things to think about there. Where does that go? Do we need to actually communicate all of this stuff that we're communicating? How much information do students need in terms of all of the help info we're providing about how to log in and all that kind of thing? And then the other big issue was sort of our brand and identity, restyling our log-on page. How much should we do there? And that, again, there was a little bit of tension there, because, I know you wanted it to be sort of really beautifully styled. I was after something quite simple, because in my mind, I would like to see us have a true single sign-on experience where students can go through our portal and get straight into LMS and not even see the landing page. But that's sort of a bigger project that was outside of this, so we left that to one side.
And Holly convinced me that simple is beautiful as well.
Bit of strong arming.
You don't need a bit of a video overlay or an image or anything like that. So.
Bit of duct tape in meetings. It's all fine. That's still something that we're working towards with our IT people. It needs a little bit of buy-in from more than just us. So again, like I said, we put that to one side because we couldn't do everything all at once. We also had to sort of take on things like our legal and sort of governance requirements as well. There's things that we need to sort of provide about our CRICOS and that kind of thing. It was like, okay, so where do we put that now in the new environment? There was also the third-party integrations. We had to make sure that all of them were going to work. You know, if we still had our original units, but was something going to happen with the base nav that was going to make something break? So we kind of got followed up with everyone just to make sure we were going to be okay, and everything has been okay. And again, the language pack. We have a custom language pack. We like to call courses units. Our academics don't like American spelling. So yeah, we've got a few little bits and pieces that we have to fix there. And it's a little bit different now, so it's a bit of there's two places to adjust the language now that we've sort of got the ultra base nav experience there. So yeah, the login and SSO, I've already talked about that. Another big thing is JS hacks. So we used it to sort of put some really targeted messages around a few key things in certain places in the LMS, so we weren't able to do that. We've had to sort of work around that. But the biggest thing was that we had replaced all of the banners and units using a JS hack, and it basically just overrode the old banner. So underneath there's this hideous old banner that probably doesn't even have the right unit code on it, you know, it's some review, and JS hacks weren't going to work, which meant that all of our units were going to have that ugly old banner popping up. So like I said, I mean, that was sort of the investigative side where we really just kind of brainstormed all of those kind of issues where, you know, we thought we were going to have a problem. So then we've, you know, spent some time reviewing the community, talked to who we needed to talk to around the institution, around, you know, the governance, and also getting some buy-in about the landing page and the login page and that kind of thing. And we were able to solve just about every issue that we had. There was a few things that we sort of categorised as sort of high, medium and low. There were some low things that we still haven't looked at now because they weren't sort of critical. But some of the things took a little bit longer than others. I mean, we kind of were chopping and changing towards the end, very close to the sort of date in July that we were going about what the landing page would be. And we kind of, you know, from day to day, it was like, oh, okay, it's going to be this. It's going to be the activity stream. No, it's going to be units. No, it's going to be the activity stream. No, okay, it's definitely going to be units. And so we kind of had to get some buy-in from our executive and from our steering committee around those kind of things, whereas other things we were able to work out as a team what we could do to address them. So, and yeah, then we went live. So, one of the things that we're talking about here is the, you know, the logging in and the landing page and all that kind of thing. So we actually went out and asked our staff and students what they thought. We asked them about the login workflow, so that was based on the idea of going to this sort of true single sign-on where you don't have to see the login page at all. We also asked them about the preferred landing page, thank you. And I think we also had to kind of think about those critical messages and support. So you can kind of see maybe, it's a little bit small, but even just little information here that tells students just, your student number's got an S at the front, you know, that kind of thing. And we actually didn't have that. When we moved to BaseNav, I kind of thought, surely students know that, we don't need to put that there. And on that day, had a call from ITMS going, we're getting hammered. Students don't know how to log in, they don't know what if they're meant to put the S at the front or not. It's like, oh, okay, we'll go back and put that in there. So, yeah, just those kind of little things there. So this is the results of the surveys that we did with our staff and students. So we did some face-to-face in our library, a couple of sessions, but we also surveyed staff and students online because we know that most of our students are actually online. So I think we ended up with about, yeah, like 800 or 900 responses. Not so many. I think we got about 40 or 50 in person and the rest were online. And as you can see, for the logging in, it was really split 50-50 when we showed them what the workflow would be to have true single sign-on through our portal, or going the way they go now, which is to click on the link to LearnLine on the home page and then log into LearnLine. But students actually had noticed that there was two different options. So they knew that there was a portal and they wondered why, when they wanted to look up, you know, their student information, that they could go, because it's not just for us, it's all of the systems. You can go through the portal or you can go through, you know, sort of the long way to get to it. So they were kind of going, why? We didn't understand why. But then others said, no, don't change it. We're used to that now. So that was interesting. And then the landing page, a little bit different. So, I mean, as I said, we were really wanting the activity stream, but students liked units better. So about 50% liked units, 44% activity stream, and then a really random selection of people liked the institution page, which, yeah, we didn't really understand why they liked that one, because that's really just going to be support information. And then for staff, 74% units, 22 activity stream and 4% institution page. And I think we got about 50 staff that actually responded. So not a really big number of staff actually took the time to let us know what they thought. But we did get feedback through going out to colleges, so, and also through our...
You know, staff sort of see everything through the lens of a unit or course experience, as opposed to when we were trying to explain the value proposition of the activity stream, they sort of confused it to things like, it's just like Facebook. No, it's nothing like Facebook at all, but that was their perception. It was like, oh, it's just all these notifications, you know, we don't think that should be the landing page. We see everything through the lens of a unit or course or a subject experience, not through that sort of more, I suppose, holistic picture that we were trying to portray around you know, the value proposition of, say, maybe landing on the stream. And then the other nice thing about the stream is that you can go straight to the unit context. You know, you can click on announcement, takes you to announcements. You click on content item, takes you to that content item. Or you can go to the top level of the course or unit and then drill through. But that was the value proposition we were trying to describe around, I suppose, the work efficiency out of that. But they just saw everything through that lens, and we're going to continue to monitor this. And, you know, maybe as we transition to the Learn Ultra experience in terms of the unit experience going forward, we'll revisit this. And I remember having conversations with you, Sharon, about this as well, in terms of how JCU selected the landing page and some of the follow-up activity you've done with student focus groups as well.
I'd say our results would probably be very similar if we put it out there as a survey. That's right.
Is it possible to have a personalised setting?
No, it's interesting you say that. So from my understanding, in terms of what's on the roadmap coming forward, that is something that is going to be considered. You know, more user choice around those sorts of options, so that as a staff member, I want to have this as my landing. As a student, I want to have this as my landing. So I believe those are the sort of considerations that, you know, the Learn product development team is looking at. And possibly even, you know, leveraging the role in the LMS so that an institution might be able to go, well, for staff, we're going to make this the landing page. For students, we're going to make this the landing page. For graders, we'll make this the landing page. So I believe there is some conversations about that. Sorry.
No, that's okay. I was just going to say that's exactly what our academics asked. Can I have this specific thing? Or students might like that, but I want this. And the other thing as well is that the academics really thought that students wouldn't go past the activity stream. They really didn't think that students would click those links to get into their unit, that they would just go, oh, well, that surface information there is enough for me and I don't need to actually engage with my unit. And I mean, we don't know whether that's actually how students would behave or not. I mean, I suspect not, because people do actually...
So there was that perception about, you know, what's new, what's due. Oh, it's not coming up. I don't need to go into my unit or course or subject. But I actually think that's probably a little bit different in reality.
Having them in parallel, have the activity stream next to them on the same page.
Well, that's an interesting challenge.
And the challenge for us in that decision is that we were wanting to leverage the activity stream for our support messages. Sort of the dual challenge with that is that our EasySoft integration doesn't work in the base nav, only in our original units. And for me, I mean, I personally thought that was a bit of a showstopper, but that, I'm okay. I'm the one that got the duct tape on my mouth in those meetings. But then it does present a challenge when we're actually directing people to units, not somewhere where we can say, hey, there's an outage, because we can put a system announcement up on the, and it will appear in the stream, and it will appear on the login page, but if you're already in, you know, you're not going to see that.
So that screenshot is what the original LMS landing page used to look like.
It's very busy. We like to have a lot of things, the different colours.
So there was lots of information. It was like we were saying before, people were wanting to sort of buy into that real estate and use that real estate for other purposes.
So yeah, you can kind of see we've got, you know, ITMS wants Office 365, student advocacy wants their information there, we're trying to push students out to support info, you know, check your computer is set up correctly. It's all kind of mishmashed together there.
And then the second screenshot is a tab within our, a community tab within Learning Analytics. So because we had a lot of investment in Learning Analytics, we still wanted to ensure that those help materials and resources were still available to the academics. So we were presenting that in a community tab and using the staff role to present that to them, so students wouldn't see that. So we had to think about, well, how would we re-engineer that? How would we repurpose that information as well?
So we have chosen to push a lot of that information to EasySoft because staff can still, because this was staff facing, the analytics, we had another one for our unit production process as well, because staff still can access it from the context of their unit. And that was actually kind of a pretty easy move to get all of that information there. And the rest of the information, we've used the institution page to capture that. And if there was anything, oh, am I? Oh, sorry. And we are trying to use the system notifications for unplanned outages and scheduled maintenance and that kind of thing. And we kind of do a, am I going to ruin another slide?
No,
okay. Since we can't use the activity stream to alert people, we do this little thing in our language pack. So where it says units, we write units, go and check the activity stream. There's an announcement. So, and so far, I mean, I don't think that that's worked any better than what we were doing in our 9.1. We still get people saying, I didn't see it. So, I mean, we haven't solved that yet. But I don't think it's any worse. It's just probably not any better. So this is what we've ended up with for our login. As you can see, nice and simple. Hopefully one day you'll never have to see it. So we've got, obviously, login. You'll see that we've got a little button here, which is our single sign-in. So if you go through the portal, you'll still land on this page, and then you just click that button and it takes you and logs you in. So obviously we want to get rid of that, so you just go straight in. And then we're leveraging this area here for announcements, and then down here is that sort of CRICOS information that we have to provide to students. And Units 1, the landing page.
Units 1, the landing page. So that view is the tile view of units. Yep. So in BaseNav, you've got two options. You've got a tile view or a list view. Some people like to see it in the tile view, so that's my sort of screenshot. So my preference was to see it in a tile view instead of a list view.
I like the list. We like to be opposite.
It's all about choice, isn't it?
So, I mean, yeah, we would like to see EasySoft at this level, and we've been talking a lot with, sorry, I'm away from the microphone. I just got to point at things, you know, I've got to point at them. But, you know, we're living with it for now. And I know that there are talks about getting it into that little support button. Yeah.
And it was interesting, like our legal and governance were insistent that we had to have ABN, CRICOS, and all those sort of governance-related material on the login page. It couldn't be at the next level down. It had to be at login. So we had to sort of figure out how we would do that. So we worked with some web developers to actually help us sort of create the login page that we've got now.
Yeah. And I guess the other issue that we had with the login page, I'm going to walk away from the microphone again.
That's all right.
Is that the logo's in a circle?
Yes.
You know, and you can't make it not be in a circle from what we could do. So that was a bit frustrating for us because our CDU logo is a wedge, and our LearnLine one's, you know, nice and long. Yeah. But we did manage to get it up a little higher because initially it was just a bit too low, and then you sort of got a lot of this info below the fold. But we've got it not too bad now. But the next challenge, if we can actually get the true single sign-on, is to get that branding and legal somewhere else. And then here is our institution page and what we've done in EasySoft. So we have pushed a lot of our support information to our institution page, and we kind of have one module for staff, and the rest is available to staff and students, and we've tried to group it reasonably logically. But we haven't found, when I've had a look at our Google Analytics, that we've had many hits on this page. So either people are okay, they can get to the support information through other mechanisms, or they just haven't clicked around. But we haven't had any sort of dire complaints about it yet, so that's good.
So you'll see that little example in terms of the EasySoft, that in this context here, we've got logged on as a staff member, so I actually do then see things around analytics. Because I've actually logged on as a staff member, we actually can then position analytics in the context of where they are in the LMS as well. So the information that we previously had in that community tab, because it was already HTML, like I was talking to you about, Shelley, it actually made this transition quite easy to repurpose this in an EasySoft context.
And it actually looks nicer.
Yeah.
I think that, I mean, some of our modules were getting a bit messy, so getting it into EasySoft, it really looks nice and clean, which is really good. All right. So we've probably covered some of these as we've been talking. But some of our key challenges, as I say, were not having, our EasySoft integration at that base navigation level, which is a bit of a problem for our communication efforts, but we're working around it at the moment. A few other things that are really very sort of specific to us. We manage the release of units to students centrally, and lecturers could just press the button and release the unit, and we had actually used a JS hack to prevent that in the past, but we couldn't do that. So we've actually gone and adjusted the permissions so that they can't release their units. So they can click on the button, but it actually won't release the unit. So it pops up with a message that says, are you trying to make a unit available? Give us a call. So that's just a little bit of a few workarounds like that we've had to do, just how we operate. And I guess the other one here is actually the tiles. So when we first were looking at BaseNav, there was no tiles. This came out in a CD just as we were sort of going to press the button and go live. And when you edit the tiles, it actually would put your image into your original unit, and if you picked a massive one, it was going to take over all of your real estate. And we didn't want staff to do that. And we also, because we were getting rid of banners, and knowing that there's no banners in an Ultra unit experience, and that's where we were headed, we didn't want people to sort of start adding banners if we were going to take them all out. The other issue is that, if they're picking images off the internet, what's the copyright around that image? Is the image appropriate? Those kind of things. So we've actually, again, adjusted the permissions so that lecturers can't actually adjust those images. So it just means we've got the out-of-the-box ones at the moment. And we may actually revisit that once we go to Ultra units, because then it won't actually populate into the unit anymore and take over all of the real estate.
So literally in the last week or so, there was another CD that modified that behaviour. So initially the behaviour, like Holly was saying, is that if I change the tile, it would pre-populate into the banner in the 9.1 experience and override the previous banner that you had in your style or properties. Even though that banner would still sit there if you went to style, you'd see it, but it would just override it. So that's why we removed that permission. And then last week in another CD, there's been some sort of modification to that. Now that if you modify the tile, it will populate back into the unit banner in the 9.1 original experience. But what we found was that if you had an existing banner set to default on your homepage, it would override that banner. So there's still some little nuances around that, in terms of addressing that. I mean, there's some issues around the CSS classes that they're using there, and I know that they're working on it. We've had conversations with Wade about that issue.
And we really like the look. It looks really lovely.
Yeah.
But I think long term, if we could have some of our own images that reflect our context, that would be great. And the last one here is messages. So this one is kind of interesting because messages have always been there. They're just more prominent now in the base navigation, and you can't remove that. We tried to disable it within a unit because people were saying they didn't know if they wanted to use messages, and then you get a nice big error message. So the issue with messages, interestingly, is that our lecturers didn't like the idea of it being more prominent because they were reluctant to use that tool in communicating with their students. And they felt that it being more prominent meant that their students would want to use that to communicate with them. Which, we were kind of thinking,
That's the purpose.
That's kind of the purpose of it, communicating with your students. So we addressed that with EasySoft. So we have a little pop-up once the student goes in there that says, hey, check with your lecturer on their preferred communication method before using this to communicate with them. So yeah, back over to you, Bill.
Okay, so what's our next steps? So at the moment, so really our next step is looking at defining a clear strategy and pathway towards the Learn Ultra unit experience. And I mean, there's so many approaches here. Do you approach it at a discipline level and actually go and work with that discipline and do level 1, level 2, level 3, level 4, 100 units and work on that chunk? Or do you work with some champions, who are actually keen to be involved in piloting Learn Ultra, who are out there, really want to be involved in piloting that? Or do you go to a faculty or college and try and work with them? And we're still, in all honesty, struggling with this to understand what the approach might be, because we have thousands of units, probably like all of yous, and do you have the resources in order to be able to meet the requirements to get all those Learn Ultra units ready by the time the teaching period comes up? And I'm sure, Sharon, you would have many stories to tell about the challenge there with your experience at JCU. So we're sort of settled on this idea that we're going to pilot next year, commencing semester 1, 2020. But what we're going to do is we're going to start with those people that actually have a level of interest and are champions. But we've also been looking at what is the data story telling us as well. So because we have access to a whole range of data sets around learning analytics, we have access to data from EasySoft, we have access to data from our help desk and our support services. So we're going to start to look at those data sources that actually help us understand what content items are being used, what tools are being used, what assessment types are being used. And that's going to help us sort of be more strategic in targeting those offerings for that ultra transition. So that's sort of where we're at the moment. And we also have a project that's working hand in hand with Blackboard Consulting, where we've identified so probably around about 14 to 15 units across multiple disciplines, multiple learning modalities, multiple enrolment levels, and multiple touch points in terms of the technology.
And vet and higher ed.
And across vocational education training and higher ed. Because what teachers wanted to know is, how long is it going to take me? So if you want me to move our content from this context to the Learn Ultra context, is it going to take me a week? Is it going to take me 10 days? Is it going to take me 2 weeks? So that's sort of what we're trying to understand now. So when we go out and have those conversations with them, we can sort of say, well, based on the analysis of the data that we have on your sort of course design or learning design, it would take you 10 hours to do this transition. So that's where we're sort of at the moment, is trying to sort of get a better understanding of what's the resourcing imperative, because that's what teachers ask us, is like, how long is it going to take me? I'm already busy. I've got 100 students, I've got 500 students, I'm marking. When do I get the time to do this? So that's sort of where we're at the moment. We're a little bit over time, but if there's any questions, more than happy to take some. Sure.
Did you have a lot of students having problems when you went to the new base navigation? Did you get a lot of calls to the help?
No, surprisingly not. Yeah, it actually was, it went really, really well. It was really,
And when you got a
really
big story to
smooth.
tell from Blackboard Student Services about that, when they said they didn't have many calls because.
yeah, so I mean, we obviously had let them know that that's what we're doing, we're moving there. But yeah, they actually were getting in touch with us and sort of saying, not so much.
And I think because we were reasonably proactive in posting up announcements into the, before base dev, saying this is coming, this is coming, this is coming, and linking up to resources around what the base navigation experience might be. When the calls did come from Blackboard Student Services, one thing they did say is, students were all aware of this.
Yeah,
So they knew it was coming.
it was the staff that maybe didn't get the messages as much, but students were aware. And we made a video as well, so that there was a video there that students could watch to kind of see how, where they would be able to find the information they'd be used to looking for. We did, and as I said, we did get a few calls from IT, just in terms of a few little niggles there about some of the information we'd taken away about the student number format.
Yes, mate.
But other than that, it was actually really good. And I think that the navigation's actually pretty easy. I mean, it's not like we've gone to Ultra. We haven't actually gone and made that big a change. It's really, so I think it was actually not too bad for people.
And it's quite a nice sort of taster as well, like in terms of the, I suppose, the experience, you know, it's actually quite a nice taster because you get the HTML overlay that flows in from the right-hand side as well. A Learn Ultra Unit experience is like, so people start to get used to that presentation layer, you know, that base navigation layer. So they start to get sort of comfortable in that context.
Yeah.
And I think it'll make our next step a little bit easier as well. Okay.
Any other questions? I think we're pretty much done for time, really. We're
Yes,
well
we are.
over.
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
That's a fantastic presentation. Thank you, everyone. Thanks.
Thank you
Darwin.
all.